Hello, I'm Dr. Hassan Tohid, and today I'm here with another sensational topic as usual, mapping reviews. Mapping reviews. Yes, mapping reviews. What are mapping reviews? Mapping reviews are also known as mapping systematic reviews or mapping evidence, mapping study. So whenever you see the terminology mapping in the study design, they actually are talking about mapping review or just the word map. It doesn't have to be mapping, it can be map. So what is a mapping review? The mapping review is actually a study design, just like a systematic review, just like a traditional review, just like a scoping review. And we have discussed all that before. Similarly, mapping review is a study design. Now, how do we define mapping review? How do we differentiate it from other kinds of review articles? So as we know, what are review articles? They are the combination of so many papers together. You combine previously published papers and you write one paper out of it. That's a review article, right? And in review articles, we have traditional reviews, the reviews that are written without any checklist or guidelines. They are just written like an essay, and they are known as narrative review, literature review, or traditional review. Then we have scoping reviews. They are a little different than traditional review, that you do follow Prisma checklist of scoping reviews, or Prisma extension of scoping reviews 2018. So you write a scoping review following the checklist, and the purpose of the scoping review is to understand the scope, how much has been done, how much study has been done on this subject, and there is no quality check in that. In systematic reviews, you follow Prisma checklist 2020 and now 2021 extension Prisma checklist. You follow that, and then you produce a paper with, of course, with an inclusion-exclusion criteria and quality appraisal, the critical appraisal. Once you do that, your paper is known as systematic review. And then systematic review can become a meta-analysis. So these are the major kinds. Now, what is the difference between these and mapping review? So mapping review, as the name suggests, shows the map. So remember, I'm telling you a secret to remember. Mapping review means it will have so many pictures, so many maps, the diagrams, the flow chart, the tables, the tabular form. So that's the secret of identifying mapping review. Now, mapping review is exactly written the same way like a scoping review. So mapping review, you can follow the same Prisma checklist, Prisma extension 2018 for scoping review. You can use the same thing. But here, what is the difference? Remember the definition first. The definition is, what exactly are you doing here? You are finding the gap in literature. Yes, in scoping review, you don't find the gap. You are focusing on a broad topic. You're not answering a question. You're focusing on a broad topic. And yes, one of your intentions is to look at a gap, but the main purpose is to extract everything that has been written about a subject, and it could be a precursor to a systematic review to identify if you want to write a systematic review in the future. Mapping review is quite similar. Here, you are not looking at all the evidence to see how much is written, but you are looking at the gap. What is the gap in previous literature? So you just find out whatever you can as quickly as possible. So this will be written faster. Mapping review will be done faster, as fast as possible, as many papers you can find in last 5 years, for example. And of course, you will miss some papers as well. So it's okay. So you find whatever papers you find. Now you are looking at the gap. Now remember, what is the definition? What exactly do you do in mapping review? You find the gap. You make sure the audience are engaged in the review, in the topic. Now, the next thing is that it is broad, just like scoping review. It is also broad. So you do a search of broad field. Although you do answer a research question here, but it will still be broad. Now, the next thing is it is systematic. It will be systematic, just like systematic review. You will follow certain guidelines, like you can use scoping review guidelines, the extension, same thing. You can use that. Although it is not a scoping review, but you can use it, and you will have an inclusion-exclusion criteria. And the last and the most important part is the visual depiction. That means your paper will have pictures, diagrams, figures, graphs, tables. Now, there is a huge disagreement in the definition of mapping review. Some people will only show you the map, the diagram, the figure, and they will say it's mapping review because they did the search, but publishing wise, they just presented the graph, the pictures. And that is a mapping review. But some people will write the whole story, narrative format, just like in a scoping review, and they will still bring the tables and figures, and they will bring the map as well. So there are both ways. There are disagreements. And we still have scientists who are disagreeing on the definition because mapping review is a new study design. It just came in 2002. So it's a very recent study design. So there is a lot more to know, a lot more to study about the study design, and we will see more changes and more additions and maybe deletion in the methodology of mapping review. So that's why there is no universal consensus or no agreement among the scientists. So you can say every scientist is right, because this is evolving. This is in a process of evolution. So it started in 2002, and we have very few mapping reviews right now published so far in comparison to other study designs. So remember, mapping review, you look at the gap, you answer a research question, but it will be broad. You engage the audience, and you write it systematically, and you will have visual depiction. Now, what you will do, you will have the introduction section, the method and results, of course, just like Prisma checklist, you're following Prisma, so you will have that, and you will follow the exact correct search strategy. Everything will be mentioned, and you then later bring more pictures and figures and diagrams and tables, more graphs to make it interesting, plots, bubble plot. So these are the things you want to add in the mapping review so it looks like a mapping review. And of course, then you will have the limitation section, and you're following Prisma checklist, remember. And one more thing now, the difference is that you will not check quality. Just like in the scoping review, you do not check quality here of the articles. In systematic reviews, you do check the quality and you keep the best articles possible. But in scoping reviews and mapping reviews, you don't. Because in mapping review, you are finding the gap. If you just check and if you just keep the highest quality evidence, you will miss a lot of studies and you will not be able to assess the gap. And same thing with scoping review, because the purpose is to scope and to search what is actually written about the subject so far. So if you include selective studies, only good quality studies, you will miss a lot of studies. So that's the way to write a mapping review, just like a scoping review. So now, what is the basic difference between scoping review and mapping review? Remember, in the mapping review, you do have a research question, although it is broad, but you have a research question. It is research question based. But scoping review is topic based, like traditional review, more like a traditional review, topic based, but mapping review can be question based. Second main difference is scoping review can be narrative in nature, but with lesser figures and tables. But mapping review will be more visually attractive. You will have more pictures, more figures, more tables, more graphs, more plots in the paper, and less summary and less narration or less narrative written material. So that's the basic difference between scoping review and the mapping review. Remember, in both, you don't check the quality. So that is what the mapping review is all about. I'll quickly repeat again. Mapping review is like a review article. It is a review article. It is written exactly in the same way like a scoping review. You can follow the same checklist of scoping review, Prisma scoping review, extension scoping review 2018. You follow the same checklist and you write your mapping review. The difference is that in mapping review, you will have more pictures and visual depiction, but less narration. And in scoping review, you will have more narration and very few tables and depiction. That's the main difference. And another difference is mapping review is research question focused, although it is broad, but research question focused. Scoping review is topic focused like a traditional review. These are the main differences. And in scoping review, our main focus is to find whatever has been done before. But here, the main focus is to look at the gap, make sure the audience are engaged in the topic, and make sure it is systematic, and make sure it has visual depiction. So these are the things you will make sure your paper has. And of course, it will be broad. So these are the things about mapping review, and this is how you differentiate between a mapping review and a scoping review. So now go back and watch this video again so that you understand what is a mapping review and what is a scoping review and what is the difference and how do you differentiate, and keep learning and keep watching. Thank you.